Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha. Say it with me. You guys have been here for 7 years, where we bring you cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And I am really excited to talk with our guest tonight. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. But before we get started, I want to always open with gratitude. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for hitting the bell and subscribing and doing all those things that push us up a little bit on the algorithms. Our numbers are growing, and we're really grateful because without you, there is no us. So thank you for that. Want to invite you to our Sunday afternoon mastermind connection. That's where we get together. It's like a spiritual group think where we come to an agreement on what we want to see changed in the world or maybe in people who are sick. And we create beautiful visualizations during meditative state with emotion, and lots of amazing things have happened. Rain has happened in places where there was a fire. A lost dog in the snow in Canada was returned before the show was even over, before the meeting was even over. We actually just visualized the dog coming back. We don't know, didn't even know what the dog looks like, but it's on the energetic level, and it worked, and it does work. And if this type of stuff excites you, we would love for you to join us. You can send an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. Augie will send you the link. It's 2 p.m. Eastern. Come hang out with us. It's so much fun. And then the second hour, we just have a conversation. And if you crave like that deep conversation that maybe you can't have with your family or maybe even some of your friends, it happens there. So before we get started, I have to tell the truth. I was digging around a little bit, looking at our guests' videos, and my curiosity and just so much about his information just piqued my desire to go deeper in this. And have you ever had like a really big desire to want to do something, maybe launch a business or write a book or do a screen or whatever it was, and it absolutely flopped, right? And then, you can look outward and point at all the reasons why it didn't happen. And then maybe sucked it up and regained your courage. And sometimes it knocks the wind out of you, and you do it again, and that didn't work either. Happened to me. And when that happens, I think it's really a good idea, and I'm going to ask our guest to talk more about this, to really begin to look inside. Because could you ever imagine that the way that we worry about what we think people are going to think about our success could actually be the thing that is stopping us? It's a valid question. So this is to be continued. Augie, please tell us about our guests.
Oh, yes. This is going to be so much fun. In fact, it's going to be a learning lesson for me because we have Travis Chappell with us. And Travis is a door-to-door salesman turned CEO, turned founder, turned investor, turned speaker, turned podcaster, and thought leader. Now, Travis has been featured in Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, and Bloomberg. Let that sink in. And he's got a podcast, and they have 10,000 podcasts for the users and clients, and under the name of Travis Makes Friends and Travis Makes Money. They interview high-profile, successful people like Shaquille O'Neal, Grant Cardone, and many, many others that you probably will know the name of. And did you notice that right after I said door-to-door salesman, I paused a little bit because I wanted to let that sink in. That's where he started. And now he has been on Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Bloomberg. That is something that everybody can do. The trick is that he's the one that did it. But everybody can if they have a dream and they put effort behind that dream. And I think I've been talking way too much. Travis, welcome to the show.
Welcome,
Augie,
Travis.
Nori, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you taking the time.
So good to have you here. So good. So I'd like to know the trajectory from door to door salesman to this beautiful seat and microphone setup that you are ensconced in. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And I had to apologize in advance. I don't know what's going on with my webcam, but it keeps flashing and turning off and turning on. So if I turn off, you should be able to continue hearing me, but it always turns back on. I don't know what's going on. I tried to troubleshoot a little bit. So I apologize in advance. However, I appreciate you having me, and I will not let it affect the energy of the meeting. So we'll jump right in. Yeah, quick catch up. I grew up in Southern California, spent my whole life on this one 20 or 40 acre campus. It was a church and school on the same campus. It was, like I said, 40 acres. They went all the way through even having a unaccredited ministerial college there. So I started going to church there when I was 3. I was in kindergarten there all the way through senior year of high school and went to all my years of college there as well. So my entire life was kind of lived on this one campus. I thought I was going to be in ministry. Turns out I didn't like it when I got a taste of it. I was interning in college and didn't like it, but was already in college. I was like a semester away from graduating. So I graduated. I got married before I graduated. And then after I graduated, realized I didn't want to do the thing that I got my degree in. And I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. So door to door was basically just a way for me to make money um, uh, without having to have a degree or without having to go work for somebody else and sit in if you're not going to get like a good job, which coming out of a Bible college, I had an unaccredited Bible degree. So I didn't have like a lot of employers that were lining up asking me to work for them. So door to door was a way for me to have some control over my own schedule, make some more money rather than working for some $28,000 a year desk job for a person I didn't respect or something like that. So I just jumped into door to door. I'd done some in college to make extra money. I was pretty good at it. And so I jumped in and really quickly realized, first of all, that it was going pretty well. I cracked 6 figures my first year in door to door, which at the time thought I was rich. You know what I mean? And but then quickly realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. And so I just kind of looked around at the people that were around me and was like, I don't want to be living this life when I'm 45 or 55 or 65. Not to say that it's a bad one to live. I have several friends that make great money and have done door to door for decades. But it just wasn't the path for me. So I went back to the drawing board and just started learning as much as I could, consuming as much information as I could, diving for the first time into self education and self personal development. And that's when I kind of stumbled on podcasting. It was really just from a consumer perspective. I wanted to continue to listen to as many shows as I could. So I became an avid listener. Eventually realized like, well, if people are making money doing this, this seems like that would be a cool thing to do. So I went out, hired a coach, joined a mastermind, started a podcast, and that was almost 8 years ago and 1,100 episodes ago. And so in that time period, we've now worn a bunch of different hats in that space. So podcast coaching, consulting, done for you production, guest booking, show booking, software, agency work, basically anything that you could think of within the podcasting space. And then now, a couple months ago, we sold basically all of that, and we are back into being kind of the full-time podcasting chair. So I have 2 podcasts: Travis Makes Money, which is a daily entrepreneurship show, and then I have Travis Makes Friends, which is a weekly society, culture, education podcast. So got 2 podcasts now, and that's been kind of the quick catch up on the journey.
Wow. Wow. Impressive. Really impressive and totally self made.
Well, yeah, I mean, self-made to a certain extent. I don't think anybody's really self-made, but yeah, I mean, like I wasn't spoon-fed the answers, and I didn't have, there was no nepotism in the podcasting space. There was, none of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So definitely self-made in that regard, but I wouldn't be anywhere near to where I am without all the relationships and help that I had along the way. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you think is the most important driving force for people who want to have a better life or be more successful or um, be a better person?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to figuring out what you want, which is much more elusive than most people think. I think, you
Uh-huh.
get that. I get asked that question all the time when you're a kid,
Yeah.
but it's funny because as adults, we stop asking that question. We always ask kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And they always have an answer. And it's always something that the adults can kind of laugh at or comment on or something. But at some point, adults stopped asking themselves that question. And I think it's to their own detriment. And I think that's why you have some people that are in, 25 years into a career that they never meant to be in, nor did they even really enjoy, because they stopped asking themselves that question. So I think it really starts with just clarity about what you want out of life, and then taking responsibility for where you currently are and being honest about where you currently are. So if you can get clarity, that's self-awareness is kind of a combination of all of those things. Is clarity about where I want to go, um, honesty about where I currently am, and then what my current skill sets are, and then a plan to develop yourself into the type of person who's capable of living the life that you want to be able to live. But you got to start with those beginning stages. Like, what do you even want? Success is a subjective term. And anybody can define success wildly differently than anybody else. So what does that mean for you? You don't
Yeah.
have to put these arbitrary massive goals that are seemingly out of reach on your vision board just because somebody else told you that that's what you should be going after. If you don't want to go after that thing, don't go after that thing. Go after the thing that you want to go after, but get clear about what that thing is, or else you don't know where you're going. You can't go somewhere that you don't know. You got to get clear on where you're going and be honest about where you are, and then be disciplined about getting there.
And the clarity thing is really, I agree with you. The clarity thing is the foundation, but the clarity thing is really hard. I've been a coach for I don't know how many years now, but I just learned a new level of clarity painfully. Retrospectively, I thought that I was doing what I wanted to do, doing what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, I had these little hiccups and bumps in my life, and it even, moved into my health. And it wasn't until I extracted myself from like everything and took like a 3-month hiatus to even see that I was doing a bunch of things that I really didn't want to do, and I didn't know I didn't want to do them. How do you figure that out when you're in the middle of it,
That's a really good question. Sorry, I swapped my camera, so it's a little bit
Yeah.
worse quality, but at least it won't stop. At least it'll stop going in and out all the time. Um,
It's okay.
yeah, that's a. And
Yeah,
this
it'll work.
is that good? Can you guys see me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
okay.
Very good.
Yeah. So how do you the question is, how do you get clarity when you're in the middle of the situation?
Yeah, you kind of think that you're doing what you want to do. And if you really step back and analyzed some of the uh, um, tripwires, I call them tripwires, like all of a sudden something in your life goes wrong, and then maybe it repeats itself, and then other things start happening. So that's a clue that you are not in alignment with something, you know. And then how do you reverse engineer it to find out that, oh my God, I'm doing things that I don't want to do, you
I
know?
think I think the biggest misconception around clarity is that it's just going to hit you one day, like it's like
Yeah.
pulling the
Yeah,
winning lottery ticket type of a thing. And oftentimes it's not. Oftentimes clarity is brought through action rather than the other way around, even though that seems counterintuitive. So I always look at it like the illustration of, imagine you're dropped in the middle of the ocean, and you know that there is land within a swimmable distance from you, but you can't see where the land is. So there's two types of people that get dropped in the ocean. The first one is somebody who gets paralyzed by indecision. They keep looking around in all the directions that they could potentially go in, and they get so confused, and they're like, well, what if it's that way? And then they think about, well, maybe it could be that way, and then they build a strategy to go that way, and then they spend so much time thinking and not swimming that they end up just drowning in the middle of the ocean and not getting to the land. Whereas clarity comes from being dropped in the middle of the ocean and then just swimming as hard as you possibly can in one direction for a minute or two. And then once you realize that you can't see the land, then you swim back to where you started and you pick another direction. You start swimming in that direction. And you could pick 11 different directions going around in this circle of potential directions you could go in before the last one that you go in, you finally get to see some land and you swim toward land and get the result that you want. So action comes from, or clarity comes from action, not the other way
Yeah.
around. So if you're stuck in this moment of like, I'm not sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I don't feel super fulfilled, or I don't feel like a sense of purpose or meaning or any sort of like happiness or joy, or this doesn't really do much for me. I don't hate it, but it's not really doing anything for me. I feel like there's something else I could be doing. Then do something else. Take your free time and swim in the direction of the thing that you're considering doing. It's really like you'll find more clarity in 10 minutes of doing something on the path that you're headed down than you will by 3 months of thinking about that thing. So to give you another example, I was talking to a friend recently who he's a business consultant, and he was helping a friend of his who had been thinking about doing this home services business for a little while, and was telling him about all the research that he'd done. And he showed this entire document that he typed out and all these other things that he was researching, and all this other market research data that he was compiling on ChatGPT and Google. And he'd been doing this for like 3 months. And my buddy sits down with them for one afternoon. They take 1 hour and they call around to all the local home service businesses that were similar to the one that he was thinking about starting, and realized that there was no meat on the bone there. That they called 3 or 4 of the numbers that they found, and all of them answered, and 2 or 3 of them had availability the next day with really competitive pricing. And within an hour of just doing something about it, they figured out that this was not a good business to go after this person had just been researching for like who knows how many hours they spent on Google or ChatGPT trying to come up with these theories and strategies and all these other things. And then 1 hour of action, it gave them enough clarity to be like, okay, well, I guess that's not it. What's next? So whatever it is, take action toward the end goal, and it will provide clarity along the way.
Yeah, and I heard also that I think it was Greg Braden that said somewhere on a video that well over half the people in the country that has a job either dislike it or hates the job they work in. And that blew me away, because I think that's because I want to hear your opinion on this, because if they don't have a dream, if they don't like it or have a dream, then it's going to be a dredge. With a dream, you can do just about anything. That's why I left Europe and came here. I had a dream. Well, what do you say about the dream? What can that drive to?
Ultimately, I'm a dreamer, so it's easy for me and maybe you guys to say that. I don't think everybody's built the same way. I don't think everybody has these like big grand visions for what their life should end up like. However, I think it's inaccurate to categorize that as a dream and this other version of life as a dream. Like, a dream does not have to be, I want to build the next Disney. A dream can just be, I want to live a great life and provide a good living for my family, and I want to spend all of my free time with my kids. Okay, cool. That's a dream. But
Yep.
I guarantee you're not living your dream life if 40 to 50 hours a week you're working on something that you hate or dislike. Like that's a really, really bad place to be. So something's got to change in that circumstance. Like, you either have to change, first of all, your perspective. You can change your perspective. Maybe you can convince yourself that you actually like this thing. Maybe you realize it's really not that bad. Maybe you have grass is greener syndrome, and you're pointing to all these other things and you're saying like that, I think it would be better over there. I think it'd be better over there. I think it'd be better over there. The reality is the grass is greener where you water it. So maybe if you just watered the grass at what you're currently doing, you could find a way to like it. Or maybe it's in the same company, but maybe it's a different position in that company. Maybe it's just the tasks that you're doing. You like the company, you like the culture, you like the people you work with, but you hate what you do. Okay. Is there a way that you can pivot? Are there other skills that you can start learning in your free time so that that job opening that you saw your colleague post could potentially be your job instead of having somebody else do it? Like, what can you do? So the first thing is change your perspective. You have to either change your outlook on what's going on there, or you have to change the circumstance. You have to change the job. You have to change the position. You have to change the role. Something about that has to change. Or you have to change your environment. Like, something will need to change if you are going to get a different result. If you never take the time to figure out what that is, then you're going to be in a rough spot, and then everything's going to suffer from there. I don't think that you can spend the majority of your waking hours doing something you really dislike and also have enough energy at the end of the day, excuse me, at the end of the day, to like pour into your family and your relationships. I think everything's going to suffer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you said take action. I would imagine on the trajectory of taking action, there could be other little side roads that might really lead you to what really feels good for you. The thing that I'm noticing more at this late date in my life is that truly, and it was so cliche, but if you follow what feels good, that's where you need to be. I'm applying that to my life so much more. People that I feel really good after I've had a conversation with them, I want to be friends with them. Things that feel good after I complete it, I want to do more of that. And maybe on that trajectory of taking action, you may find something that you never even anticipated, and all of a sudden you love it, and you're a millionaire or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. That's the old example of this Steve Jobs, commencement speech. You can't join. The only way to join the dots is by looking back. Man, I got the hiccups now. The only way to join the dots is by looking backwards. What's that?
Want me to scare you to get rid of your
Yeah.
hiccups?
Do something. Yeah, scare me or something. But the only way to join the dots is by looking backwards. So you're not gonna be able to piece it together with the vision of looking forward. That's where the action comes in, because the path can take you down a variety of options through a variety of fields and have a variety of stops.
Yeah.
But if you don't take the first step, then you're not going to get to the next step. Success is a spiral staircase. You can only see the next step.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that we have to go way back, and examine, like, if you're really, really stuck, maybe examine our beliefs, and where they came from, because we're so indoctrinated between 0 and 7 years old, so we've got all this stuff in our subconscious mind that doesn't really even belong to us, but is still driving us. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. It all starts in your mind. And if you haven't interrogated your beliefs, that could be a really great place to start.
I like
If you
that.
can't articulate why you believe something, then it's probably not your belief. It's probably somebody else's that was passed down to you. Not to say that it's wrong, but you should at least examine it, interrogate it, ask yourself a couple questions about it. That's the whole thing. It's like, just because it was passed down to you does not mean it's incorrect, right? There's a lot of great beliefs that are passed down from generation to generation that should be. However, there are also quite a few limiting beliefs that are passed down from generation to generation. And if you never take the time to ask yourself about all of them, then you never figure out where you're wrong, because the odds of being born 100% right are basically zero.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you never take the time to interrogate any of the things you believe, you're inevitably wrong about a bunch of things. So you got to be willing to throw everything that you believe up into the air, throw on somebody else's lenses for a second and see the world through their eyes, and ask yourself, is this truly what I believe? Or is this just something that was taught to me that I adopted? And does it serve me?
Yeah.
Because sometimes those beliefs don't serve you. So my filter is like, does it serve me, and does it harm other people? You know what I mean? If it doesn't harm anybody else and it does serve me, then it's probably a good belief to adopt. even if you can't prove it to be true. A lot of the beliefs are just that. They're beliefs. That's faith. It's something that you believe to be true, or something you have some sort of faith or hope that is true. And as long as it doesn't harm others and it does serve you, great, use it,
Yeah.
go for it. But if you can't articulate why, then it's probably not your belief. It's probably a belief that was passed down to you.
Mhm.
I like that. I like that. That's good. That's a good measuring stick, really.
I think too that there's a lot of people out there that start out a multi-level business or store business or anything, and then they quit. What about persistence? My opinion is nothing outperforms persistence. A lot of times it's a good thing, but it's hard work. So we say, oh, I don't want to do it. But it could be hard work for a little while until it turns more comfortable and easier once you first learn how to do it and you get over the hump starting it out. But a lot of people quit. I would like you to visit that thing about persistence, how important that is.
There are several things that are the common denominators of the most successful people I've ever talked to. Of all of them, persistence is definitely toward the top of the list. If you want any sort of outsized success, if you want to live any type of an above average life, persistence is required. It's the barrier to entry. You can't even play the game unless you're willing to be persistent. Rejection is going to be a part of everybody's success story. And I remember reading this book from Tim Ferriss a long time ago. It's called Tribe of Mentors. And it's basically a collection of advice from Tim Ferriss's mentors, from the people that he looks up to. And if you don't know, if you're listening or watching, you don't know who Tim Ferriss is, he's a multiple New York Times bestselling author. He's a top rated podcaster, hundreds of millions of downloads on his podcast. One of the bigger thought leaders of our generation, wrote the 4 Hour Work Week, 4 Hour Body, Tribe of Mentors, Tools of Titans. Everything he touches becomes successful. He's a very successful angel investor. And so you look at somebody like Tim Ferriss, you think like this is a out of touch type of a person. Like they're so successful. Everybody's going to say yes to them, that they live in a different planet. It's not the same game. Well, Tim Ferriss wrote there's an entire chapter, I believe it's Tribe of Mentors, where he actually asked the permission of the people who rejected him to put their rejection letters in at the end of the book, to basically say, first of all, like it's a chapter on how to say no to things, essentially, because that's a skill that some people lack. But for me, it ended up being a lesson in rejection, to say that even Tim Ferriss, at the level of success that he's had, still gets rejection letters from people who are contributing to a book that was inevitably going to be on the New York Times bestseller list. Like who would say no? Like in your mind, you're like, who would say no to that? But there are still lots of people who said no. There's still lots of people who rejected Tim Ferriss. And even for Tim Ferriss, he was just like, it doesn't ever feel good. It was like, there's never a point where you reach in life where you're just like untouchable, where the rejection doesn't hurt anymore. It's just that it doesn't matter. It's just a thing that happens. And if you cannot get past that, you will not be able to see any sort of outsized success in life. The most persistent people are going to be the people who win. Now, the more you become persistent, the better you become at being persistent, right? So when I first started, I didn't know the difference between I call it pushy persistence and professional persistence. There's a difference between the two of them, and if you can be more of a professional in your persistence, then you can get really great results. Whereas if you're annoying, then you're just going to turn people off and irritate everybody. So there's a right way to do it, but persistence is the name of the game. Like you cannot win the game if you don't stay in the game. It's what I'm working on with my kids right now. Is my son's 6, my daughter's 4. My son, when we play video games or something like that, I'll play easier, but I don't like just let him win all the time. And so when he loses, he throws a big fit and everything like that and all that. And I just have a conversation with him, just say, look, buddy, it's not about the win. And I just say, like, I was just, because the other day he said, I'm a loser after he lost the game. And I sat him down. I was like, I want to make sure, buddy, you are not a loser. You don't take on the identity of a loser just because you lost the game. In fact, the people who are the biggest winners in life are also the biggest losers. You know who missed the most shots in NBA history? Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Like,
Ah,
you know who lost the most finals? LeBron James. Like two of the best players of all time. The greatest people lose all the time. The difference is they stay in the game. So that's the conversation I had with him. Is like, buddy, you are not a loser. The only way you become a loser is if you quit. The only way to stop, the only way to take yourself out of this is if you stop doing it. Those who persist and stay in the game are going to be the ones who win the most long term, and losing is just a part of that. So if you can't learn to overcome that rejection, if you can't learn to overcome the fear of loss, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of rejection, if you can't overcome that, then you may as well not even jump into the game, because it's required. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how often.
And every single one of us, from I don't know, my best friend to the most influential person on the planet, I don't even know who that is, all has that same, still has the same fear, that it's
yeah,
still in our human behavior. Fear of being embarrassed, fear of being guilty, fear of being ashamed. It's all there, right? So we have to. How do we deal with that? How do we make that okay, and then move on? Because that's when people drop out, right?
Yeah, it's volume. The only way to get comfortable with something is preparation or repetition. Those are the two things. So you either over prepare to overcome your fear, or you just do it so often that you get so comfortable in that space that nobody else can compete with you in that space. And I
yeah,
learned this a lot when I was doing door to door. Is that you just have to stay in it, and the volume of repetitions that you get in door to door sales or telemarketing or something like that is invaluable because of that one thing. It teaches you how to lose at volume and still win. Like, there's no way I'm selling more. There's no way I'm going to be 100% close rate on doors. There's no way I'm going to be 50% close rate on doors. You half the doors you knock, somebody's not even home. So you just got to keep knocking, keep knocking, keep knocking, and the more you put yourself in the situation of discomfort, the more comfortable you become in that unknown feeling of discomfort. And it's just that most people aren't willing to stay in that uncomfortable space, which again is something door to door taught me. Because even when you get down to the close and you're about to win a deal, there was several times at the beginning where I would talk myself out of a sale because I was talking too much. So when I would
hmm
ask, so when I would go in and ask for the sale, and salespeople all over the place do this all the time. When I go in and ask for the sale, I was so uncomfortable in the awkward silence that happened inevitably, that I would just start talking, and I would just start word vomiting at the end
yeah,
of it, even though they had already made it in their mind. They'd already made a decision to say yes. Maybe they were just thinking about it, or they had one question that was remaining, but they were just still kind of toying over it. And then I interrupted their thought to say something because I felt like I had to say something else to get them to move to the next step, and ended up bringing up another objection that they didn't even have in their mind. And now I'm talking myself out of a sale instead of just shutting up and allowing my presentation to do the work at that time. But in that situation, it was like whoever speaks first loses type of a thing. And I learned really quickly to get really comfortable with the uncomfortability of the silence that
yeah,
happened in that. It's not like it's a crazy long time, but it sometimes could be 10-15 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot. But if you sit there in silence for 15 full seconds, it can get really, really uncomfortable. But I learned really quickly that, like, if I'm this uncomfortable in this silence, I know that they're really uncomfortable, because I just did this like
yeah,
14 times yesterday and they did it 0 times. So inevitably, like, we're both uncomfortable, but if I'm the one that speaks first, then I lose that situation. So I think it's just a matter of those two things: is you over prepare, you learn your stuff, you get as good as you can in your free time, and then when you're in the situation, whoever is more comfortable in that feeling of uncertainty or discomfort is going to be the person who wins at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't know
And
that awkward moment, right? That moment where you're just looking at the person, they're looking at you, and you know, I'm like, don't say anything, just don't say anything, be quiet.
Just shut up. Yep.
yeah, and maybe nod your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, there's a saying out there, and that is that when you're walking through a minefield, I don't know where the saying come from. I've been using it for 20 years. Maybe I made it up, but it's when you're walking through a minefield, follow somebody that have bigger shoes than you have. That means that just means that when you're going to go do something, find somebody that is really successful at what you want to do and crawl in their back pocket and learn everything they know. And that is why you have so many followers, Travis. You got hundreds of thousands of people following you because you have the fruit on the tree to show them. And that's what I want people to listen to here, because um, we're at the bottom of the hour now, so I want to make sure that people know who we're talking to. We're talking about Travis Chappell, and we're talking about success and success principles. Let the people mention where they can get a hold of you, the website and the newsletter and things like that.
Sure. Well, first of all, I am a podcaster through and through. So my love language is listening to my podcast. So anybody that wants to hear daily conversations with entrepreneurs, you can go to Travis Makes Money podcast, which is on all platforms, including YouTube. And then for longer form conversations that are more education, self-improvement based is Travis Makes Friends. We talk a lot about friendships and relationships on that show. We do weekly episodes there, and that's where all podcasts are, including YouTube as well. So Travis Makes Money and Travis Makes Friends are the podcasts. And then for anything else, you just go to travischappell.com, CHAPPELL, travischappell.com. There's right on the homepage, there's a way to sign up for my newsletter. We send weekly emails out there. We put a lot of work into the newsletter as well. I think we do a really good job of providing some really good value over there, typically about entrepreneurship, money making, and things like that. So we do kind of like a synopsis of the 7 episodes we released that week on Travis Makes Money. We throw in some friendship content, but it's basically all like, hey, here's a blueprint for you on if you're thinking about going to business. Here's this potential business model. Here's the way that we get into this business model. Here's how much money you can expect to make, type of a thing. So we break down everything really well over there. So you can find that at travischappell.com.
That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And I was just want to say also that fear of starting is something that a lot of people, when they're going to start an endeavor of something, being business or whatever, starting out is the hard part. I would love to have you comment on that, because we don't have to know everything all the way through to start, because we figure it out along the way sometimes too. Speak a little bit about the startup and the fear of being the first one to, maybe in your family, to become a millionaire, you know.
Yeah, this is I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, because I just believe that the fear of embarrassment has prevented more millionaires than just about anything else. We cannot ever remove ourselves completely from the opinions of others. We're a social environment. We're social creatures. I think that it's easy for people online just to say stuff like that all the time, like, just stop caring what other people think about you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, but there's also an exception to that. Like, you still have to be a social creature. You still have to live with people. You still have to like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't blow up all of your interpersonal relationships. Just, and people who embody that completely are just a-holes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what anybody thinks. And then they're just mean to everybody, and they genuinely don't care what anybody thinks about them. And it's just like, okay, well, even if you become successful, to me, that's not a version of success that I want. So I understand that you're always going to be tied to, in some way, the opinions of other people have. But when you start letting those opinions prevent you from living the life that you want to live, that's where you start running into the problems. It's not to say that you shouldn't care what people think about you and screw those people if they don't support you, type of a thing. It's just to say that I think my point is that there's too many people that are on that side, that are on the way opposite side of the equation instead of this side of the equation. So instead of I don't care what anybody thinks about me, they're like I care what everybody thinks about me, and that's not a good position to be in either. So if you find yourself where the fear of embarrassment or the fear of failure is preventing you from starting something, then ask yourself, like, who am I actually afraid of judging this thing from failure? Is it the people that are closest to me? Is it my wife, my husband, my kids, like the people who are who are in this ride with me no matter what? Or is it random people on the internet? Because those are two wildly different groups of people. And one of them can be talked to and explained to. The other one, you should never even try to explain what you're trying to do. So enroll the people that are closest to you in the mission, and then just start. You just like you said earlier, you're not going to have all the pieces of the puzzle in front of you. That's what makes it kind of difficult, and that's what makes it risky. But that also is what makes it fun and rewarding, is that you don't know exactly how it's going to come together. And kind of like what I said earlier, success is a spiral staircase. So you may not know what step 12 is, but you know what the next step is. You know that you need a landing page. Like, you know that you need probably a way to get in touch with people. You know that you need a way to collect payment. Like, there are some things that you can do right now, and you know what those things are. So take those first couple of steps. I would typically encourage people to take steps that don't have anything to do with spending money at first, because I think people confuse that for action. You know what I mean? Like, instead of going out and finding customers for their business before they started, they go out and they pay for an expensive website and get a bunch of business cards and hats and t-shirts. And it's like, well, you just dropped like 15 grand on websites, materials, hats, t-shirts, logos, on something that you don't even know is going to work, something you don't even know people want to buy yet. So start off with almost no money, and just put in the effort that's required at the very beginning. But do something. Again, what we talked about earlier, if you start, you will figure out what the next step is. And maybe the next step is stopping that thing and starting another thing. It does, just because you start, something like, I'm going to start whatever, I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to start a social media agency or something like that. Well, you can do it for 3 months and then be like, okay, well, that didn't really go how I planned, or I didn't really like that, or something about it turned me off to doing that anymore. Cool. Well, then do something else. And then you might eventually, people start going out. They understand that that's going to be the case if they give back to these people that are coming up behind them. But if you're not somebody who's willing to be mentored, if you're not somebody who's teachable, if you're not somebody who's going to take action on the advice that you give or that you get, then you're probably going to find yourself wanting for mentors and advisors in those tough times, because you never did anything with any of the stuff that any of them told you to do and to begin with. So they just want to see that there's going to be some sort of give and take in the relationship. And if you're constantly just taking, it's a really good way to end up with a network full of takers, which is not one that I want.
Yeah, and everybody needs a mentor, or at least a few. And speak to that a little bit, because mentors are so important.
Absolutely. Well, like kind of like what I said earlier, there's one of the mindset differences between successful people and non-successful people is successful people tend to value time over money, and non-successful people tend to value money over time. And mentors, coaches, anybody who's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt in front of you in whatever field that you're in, that's nothing but a way to compress time. It's also helpful for mental health. It's helpful to know that, you're not a crazy, so sometimes it can be difficult if you're kind of the person in your circle that's doing all these crazy things all the time, and all your other friends are, working W-2 jobs and kind of doing the more traditional, quote unquote, traditional path. Having a mentor who's just as crazy or crazier than you are makes you feel somewhat normal. So that's a good thing. You have a sounding board. It's good for your mental health. You have somebody to connect with, somebody who can get to know you and your problems, somebody you can be honest with about the struggles that you have. If you're running a business, you got a bunch of employees, you might be close to some of your employees, but you can't necessarily go to them with a big problem that's happening inside of the business when you're trying to instill confidence in them that the company is going somewhere and doing big things. That does not mean that you're not going to have any struggles or things that you're working on. So having somebody to share those things with, that's again been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, will help normalize the situations. But the main thing is that we'll always compress time. So even if you have to pay for your first mentor in the form of a coach or something like that, it's always worth the investment to invest that money back into yourself, because they could help you fix something that would take you 18 months to figure out on your own, and they could do it in a week. They could do it in a single 30-minute coaching session because they've just seen it time and time and time again. And I remember this stuck out to me as like an illustration for this when my son was, I want to say he was maybe 18 months, 2 years old. I don't know, so somewhere around there. And not to brag or anything, but I'm way smarter than my 2-year-old son. And I remember watching him. He was putting together this. It was like a puzzle or something like that. And he had to like put this shape into this. Maybe it was one of those balls you put the shape in like the different holes. You know, if it's like a square hole or a round hole or a triangle hole, whatever, kind of teaches them shapes,
Yes.
whatever. And I remember watching him do it. Like I said, he was an infant at the time, and he was like he kept the piece was upside down, and he kept trying to like, he knew it was the right piece, but he kept trying to like force the piece into the hole, and couldn't quite figure it out. And I just remember watching him struggle with it. And as a parent, I try to let them struggle as much as I can when I want them to figure something out. I try not to step in and do it. I don't want to be the parent who cripples the butterfly wings. You know what I mean? So I was just watching him do it for probably a solid like 2 minutes. It was quite some time just watching him struggle. And then eventually I just kind of reached back down and just flipped the thing upside down for him. And then he pushed it in, no problem. I remember looking at that and thinking like, that is exactly what a mentor does. Is like, I could be driving myself crazy for months on end, trying to force this thing into this hole, trying to like figure out this problem and just be bashing my head against the wall. And a mentor who's been in that room and in that exact situation 30 times in the last 25 years can look at me, look at the situation and be like, have you tried this one thing? And then just solve it in a half a second and free up all that space, that mental energy, that time, the money I'm wasting by just stepping in and using their expertise to solve the problem. So mentors, coaches, people who are smarter than you, it's non-negotiable to have those types of people in your corner because of the amount of time that it can compress for you and the amount of time that it can save off of your learning curve. And that's our most important, that's our most valuable asset. Time. You can get money back. I've talked to so many people who've lost millions and millions, tens of millions even of dollars, and made it back in 3 years, 5 years, whatever the time frame is. But zero people that I've ever talked to have ever figured out how to get themselves more time. So time's the most valuable asset that we have. How can you exchange your money to get more time? Mentorship, books, conferences, events, coaches. That's the answer.
So I'd like to, before we close, I'd like to kind of turn it inward a little bit and ask your perspective on your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your body, the way that you take care of your energetic hygiene, the way that you feed your mind. How important is that to your success? And do you have any methods that you recommend people do, like, definitely work out every day or walk or anything like that?
I would say it's probably the number one factor that contributes to your success is your relationship with yourself, because it's not, like I said earlier, success is a subjective term. But I think that if you asked a broad swath of people, almost all of them would put happiness, meaning, purpose, some sort of, elusive goal as a part of their happiness equation. Right. It's not just money. It's usually like, I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled in my work. I want to have purpose in life. I want those things. I also want money. I also want freedom. I also, so typically it's a combination of money and freedom, but happiness and fulfillment and those things are always tied into it. And by far, the longest study on human happiness ever conducted by Harvard found that relationships are the number one factor that contributes to somebody's happiness in their lifetime. And your relationships, the foundation for your relationship with everybody else in your life is your relationship with yourself. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself, then it's really difficult to have good relationships with other people. And you're always going to struggle in those relationships and therefore always struggle with your happiness and your fulfillment. So almost everything, I think, comes back down to your relationship with yourself, even as it relates to success. And we are not separate beings. We can't separate pieces of ourselves. We can't separate the mental from the physical, from the spiritual, from the mindset. Like we're holistic. So if you're not taking care of your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being, your physical well-being, it will 100% bleed into everything else. So I think it's paramount to have a great relationship with yourself. How do you do that? I think it's going to look a little bit different for everybody. But for me, like those daily habits is the gym.
Yeah.
It's going for walks. It's drinking more water. It's prioritizing sleep, sunlight. Like to me, like people spend so much time worrying about supplements and NAD and this thing and that thing and this new health hack and biohack and wearing these types of glasses versus that supplement and putting this skin patch on. But then they don't prioritize their sleep. They never see the sun during the day. They don't get any exercise or physical activity. And if they do, they're doing the wrong things. Like if most people would just drink more water, prioritize sleep, prioritize protein in their diet, and go for a walk every day, that by itself would drastically increase productivity at work, happiness, mental health. It'll defog your brain. So you have to take care of your physical self. You have to take care of your mental self, your spiritual self, and all of those things will bleed into your success. So if you are in a position where you can't spend any time by yourself without driving yourself insane, where like you have to look at your device, you have to be on social media, you have to be watching Netflix, you have to have a podcast, and you got to be listening to music, you can't ever be with yourself by yourself with just your thoughts, then that's probably a red flag. That probably tells you that you are not comfortable with something about you, whether that's things that you're doing in secret that don't align with the version of yourself that you portray to the world. It could be that you are not keeping the promises that you've made to yourself. It could be that you just have bad self-worth from negative experiences as a child, trauma that happened when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Regardless of the reason, you need to dive into it. You have to do the uncomfortable work of figuring out why you can't be with yourself, because there's something that you don't trust about you. And I promise you, if you don't trust something about yourself and you can't quite put your finger on it, other people are going to feel the same exact vibe from you. They're going to not trust you and not be able to put their finger on it. But it's probably not because you're untrustworthy. It's probably because you view yourself as being untrustworthy. And therefore that bleeds into the conversations and relationships you have with everybody else. So ask yourself that question. Can I spend time by myself? If you don't know the answer, then just do it. Go for a walk for an hour and don't bring anything with you. Don't bring your dog. Don't bring your phone. Just go for a walk, go for a drive. Don't turn on the music. Don't listen to podcasts, and see how long you can spend just being with you, thinking about your life, thinking about the future, visioning what you have going on, what your daily activities look like. And if that's a really hard thing for you, then there might be some really difficult work that you're going to have to do soon, which has to do with getting back to trusting yourself, respecting yourself, setting some small goals and doing those goals no matter what. Yeah, I don't make a lot of promises to myself anymore because I know that when I don't keep those promises, that it makes myself trust and respect myself less. So I only make promises to myself that I know I can keep, because that's going to portray how much confidence I have in my ability to deliver. And that confidence will bleed into my relationships with other people.
Perfect. That's wonderful. That's everything. Thank you so much. Augie, do you want to ask your world famous question before we
Oh,
close?
yes. But before that, one more time, would you let people know where they can go and listen to your shows? And if there are any services that you do for people, please let them know.
Sure. Yeah. TravisChappell.com. You can find all my stuff there. And then if you're listening on a podcast platform or YouTube or anything like that, you can just search Travis Makes Money or Travis Makes Friends, and you'll find both of those podcasts there.
Okay, all right. I have one last question for you. If you can talk to the whole world and the world is listening, what would you tell them? That was my
Probably some.
answer too. That's the
Yeah.
first time
Yeah.
I heard it. That was my last answer.
Yeah. Probably something about empathy or respect. I think I think if we all had more empathy for each other and respected each other as human beings, that the world would be a much kinder and safer place for everybody. So
Yeah,
more empathy, more respect.
Beautiful.
absolutely.
That's a great note to end on. Travis Chappell, thank you so much for being with us. I just feel like my life has been made better for spending this hour with you and Augie. So thank you so much. And thanks, Augie.
Thank
Thanks everybody in the chat room. I saw you. Sorry I couldn't get in and type, but we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Much love, everybody.
thank you. Thank
Augie,
you.